short, slightly built, baby-faced, and soft-spoken, Texan Audie Murphy was far from the popular image of a warrior or hero. When he tried to enlist early in World War II, he was initially rejected by both the Army and the Marines, but became the most decorated soldier in American history. In less than 2 years, his fighting spirit, leadership qualities, and courage under fire made him a legend, living in the war tradition of Sergeant Alvin C. York, General Theodore Roosevelt Jr., and Colonel Louis B. Chesty Puller, the young man who won a total of 28 medals and decorations, including his country's highest honor, the Pale Blue Ribbon, had extremely humble origins. Born on the 20th of June 1924, near the small town of Farmersville in northeast Texas, as the child of a sharecropper family, Audie Murphy was the 7th of 12 children. He grew up in extreme poverty. At school, his classmates nicknamed him Short Pants because his only pair of trousers had shrunk from constant washing. Audie's father, Emmett Murphy, had started working in local onion and cotton fields alongside farmers, and the child joined him as soon as he was able. Life was hard and food was scarce. Audie's quiet, sad-eyed mother, Josie Bell Murphy, worked tirelessly both at home and in the fields. The family moved frequently in search of work and eventually settled in the small town of Celeste in Hunt County, a few miles away. The Murphy family lived for a while in an old train car on the outskirts of town before moving to a dilapidated house. Young Audie had to neglect his education because he was needed to earn money. He dropped out of school after completing 5th grade. He was 9 years old. The child loved hunting in the local brush. Having keen eyesight, quick reflexes, and a determined personality beneath his gentle demeanor, the child showed extraordinary accuracy with a rifle and could hunt rabbits and squirrels for the family table. He was a natural marksman. These traits would serve him well later. Restless and hopeless due to the difficult times when the Great Depression gripped the country, Emmett Murphy abandoned his family several times and left permanently in 1940. Audie sarcastically said, "My father wasn't lazy. He just had a genius for not thinking about the future." A few months later, when his beloved mother died of heart disease on May 23, 1941, the child experienced the most heartbreaking experience of his life. The child, who was always by his mother's side, mourned for months. While Audie spent most of his youth working odd jobs, selling newspapers, picking cotton, working at a gas station, a grocery store, and a radio repair shop. Most of his siblings disappeared into orphanages. After listening to stories told by 2 uncles who had served in France in 1918, he became curious about military matters and often told his friends he wanted to join the army. In addition to the adventure and fame it promised to youth, a military career meant escaping the grip of rural poverty. Therefore, when the Pearl Harbor attack on the 7th of December 1941 dragged America into World War II, Audie Murphy, then 17, eagerly went to the recruitment office. His enthusiasm quickly faded. Standing only 5'5" and weighing only 110 pounds, Audie was rejected by recruitment officers from the Marines and Army airborne units. But he didn't give up. On the advice of one of the recruitment officers, he returned home and spent the next few months gaining weight with bananas and milk. Then, with a letter from his sister stating he was 18 years old, he applied to recruitment officers in Dallas and was accepted into the Army on the 30th of June 1942. After 13 weeks of basic training at the desolate Camp Walters in Texas, Audie was sent to Fort Meade, Maryland, for advanced infantry training in late autumn 1942 after fainting while learning close order drill. He adapted easily to Army life. Among the companionship of barracks, mess halls, and pub tents, he finally felt he had found a home where he belonged. Due to his almost girlish facial features, he was nicknamed Baby by his comrades. An officer suggested that this unassuming young man should be a headquarters runner rather than a rifleman, but he vehemently objected. He was determined to prove himself in combat. He impressed his superiors with his attitude, leadership, potential, and loyal demeanor, and soon began wearing the corporal's stripes. Murphy began a brief but unparalleled military career when he sailed to North Africa by troop ship in February 1943. In North Africa, he joined Company B of the 1st Battalion, 15th Infantry Regiment, part of the proud 3rd Rock of the Marne Infantry Division from World War I. He spent 28 months with them, but had to wait several months in North Africa before entering combat. Audie's introduction to war came in early July 1943, when the British 8th and US 7th Armies invaded Sicily to overthrow German and Italian defenders and advance toward the key port of Messina, a stepping stone to the Italian mainland. Audie's regiment landed at Licata on the 10th of July. The difficult struggle to capture the dusty and rugged island dispelled the young Texans' previous thoughts about whether war was adventurous or romantic. War was a matter of mountains, mulos, lonely nights, hunger, thirst, and exhaustion. However, self-disciplined and no stranger to hardship, Audie volunteered for patrols, was ready for duty during advances, and demonstrated his weapon skills. He also displayed a tough and realistic approach to infantry warfare that was rarely seen among civilian soldiers. Once, when he saw 2 Italian officers fleeing on white horses, he coldly shot them. His disturbed squad leader asked him, "Why did you do that?" Audie replied briefly and concisely, "That's our job." Murphy fell ill with malaria for several weeks in Sicily. After recovering, he violently resisted efforts to transfer him to another unit as a replacement and rejoined his company at Salerno. The 3rd Infantry Division had landed there 9 days after the British and American armies landed in Italy. The division engaged in a series of battles around the Volturno River, and Audie quickly realized that if the Sicily operation went badly, Italy was much worse, with more mountains to climb, rainy days and cold nights, mud, and constantly falling artillery shells. He witnessed enough suffering and death to last a lifetime. After battle with German forces, Audie and his men, patrolling on a dark night, took shelter in an abandoned stone quarry. The enemy followed them but were stopped by American fire. This resulted in the death of 3 men and the surrender of others. This engagement earned Murphy 3 stripes. He and his comrades participated in the terrible Monte Cassino operation, passing through Mignano and Montelungo in the Italian boot. The brave little Texan was known for never staying away from the front and eagerly setting out alone to track down and kill Germans wherever he could find them. He earned his first Bronze Star by leading a night patrol to destroy a damaged German tank that its crew was trying to repair using rifle grenades and Molotov cocktails. Audie was a complete infantryman. He used light weapons confidently and, unlike many civilian soldiers, did not hesitate to kill the enemy. Historian S.L.A. Marshall reported after World War II that most American infantrymen rarely fired their weapons during combat and rarely hit their targets when they did fire. Murphy always fired and usually hit his target. Although he claimed to be as prone to fear as his comrades, Audie possessed tactical reasoning that helped him maintain his composure, even when others became nervous. Despite his lack of formal education, he had natural intelligence and the ability to assess a combat situation. Experience helps. You quickly learn that a situation isn't as dark as imagination paints it. Some always succeed, he said. After a bout of malaria that kept him in a field hospital for 10 days, Murphy was offered a battlefield commission. However, he declined because he didn't want to leave his company. Then came the Anzio invasion in January 1944, which nearly ended in disaster. British and American forces were held on the beachhead for 4 months and crushed under German artillery and bombardment. For the unfortunate soldiers at Anzio and British troops, surviving each day was a victory, and Audie Murphy watched many of his friends die there. Sadly, he said, "I'm beginning to feel like I've escaped the law of averages." One of his friends, cartoonist Bill Malden, later included this comment in one of his famous Willie and Joe drawings depicting the suffering of US infantrymen in World War II. Audie survived the Anzio disaster without injury and became one of the few in his company who didn't receive a Purple Heart without being wounded. He became the last survivor of his company's 235 members. Audie, a serious and lonely figure who rarely received letters at mail call, was most at ease with his frontline comrades. He was extremely loyal to his company. As long as there's a man in line, he said, maybe my place is beside him. He felt restless while on leave in Rome following the capital's liberation by General Mark W. Clark's U.S. Fifth Army on the 5th of June 1944. "We wander through Rome like ghosts," he recounted, "satisfied with nothing we see or do. I feel like a man who has briefly escaped death, and there's no joy in me. We can have no hope until the war ends. As I think of the soldiers at the front, I become lonely on the streets of Rome." Following the liberation of the Eternal City, the battle-weary 3rd Infantry Division was withdrawn from the front to retrain and re-equip for Operation Dragoon, the Allied amphibious landing in southern France between Toulon and Caen. The division, reinforced with replacements and now under the command of the short, stocky Major General John W. Iron Mike O'Daniel, landed at Cavalier Bay and Pampelon beaches on the 15th of August, 1944. Audie Murphy's Company B landed near the town of Ramatuelle, south of Street Chopes, that morning. 3 hours after crossing the beach and heading inland, the 1st Battalion of the 15th Regiment was pinned down by a German machine gun nest on Grove Hill. Audie's company was brought forward from reserve to find a new approach line, but it too was pinned down. Thereupon, the little Texan, on his own initiative, crawled downhill to the heavy weapons squad, borrowed a .30 caliber machine gun, and climbed up the slope with his closest friend, Private Latty Tipton, to find a firing position. They quickly killed 2 German defenders. After exhausting their ammunition belts, Murphy and Tipton attacked and captured a German trench using carbines and hand grenades. When an enemy soldier in a nearby trench waved a white flag, Tipton carelessly stood up to accept surrender. He was shot and killed. Enraged, Murphy grabbed an abandoned German MG-42 machine gun from the ground and charged up the slope, firing from the hip and throwing hand grenades with his free hand. Single-handedly and firing at everything that moved, he destroyed several enemy positions and killed 5 Germans, wounded 2, and captured 5. The rest of Audie's company, who had failed to support him despite his profanity, advanced to occupy the ridgeline. The Texan's heroism earned him the Distinguished Service Cross, presented on the 5th of March 1945. However, this did not compensate for the loss of his friend Tipton. "I won the DSC," he said, "but all he got was death." With support from Free French and the resistance groups emerging from hiding, American forces advanced rapidly up the Rhone Valley in the summer of 1944. For the soldiers of the 3rd Infantry Division, this operation was encouraging after the hellish months spent in Italy's endless mountains and muddy valleys. Sergeant Murphy reported, "We're experiencing great enthusiasm because there's nothing better than advancement for infantry morale." However, in late August 1944, a shell fragment hit Audie's heel and kept him in a field hospital for 2 weeks. On the 15th of September, in fighting near Besançon, a German mortar shell exploding near Murphy caused the death of 2 nearby soldiers and kept Murphy in the hospital for another week. He couldn't help wondering if his luck was running out. All the soldiers in his squad with whom he had bonded in North Africa and Italy were now either wounded or dead. The loss of his comrades affected him deeply, and he avoided forming close relationships with their replacements. He was seen as a soldier fighting his own war. Audie was also becoming increasingly angry. "So many men have come and gone that I can't keep track of them anymore," he lamented. "I've isolated myself as much as possible. All I want is to do my job and be left alone. I feel exhausted, emotionally and physically drained. Let the hill be full of corpses, as long as I don't have to turn over bodies and find the face of a familiar friend." He continued to fight and, like all his frontline comrades, tried to survive each day. During fighting around Clury on the 2nd of October 1944, Audie unknowingly led a patrol into a German ambush. When the soldiers were trapped under heavy fire, Murphy crawled to the enemy's side and attacked along. Firing a Thompson submachine gun and throwing hand grenades, he destroyed them. He was awarded the prestigious Silver Star. 3 days later, on the 5th of October, several of Audie's men were shot in a similar engagement. The brave Texan stealthily advanced until he could see the enemy positions and called in artillery and mortar fire by radio. The Germans withdrew with heavy losses, and Sergeant Murphy added an oak leaf cluster to his Silver Star. Due to his courage and leadership, senior officers invited Audie to a battlefield commission several times, but he declined each time. He thought his inadequate education would prevent him from handling an officer's administrative duties. Additionally, the Army regularly commissioned new officers from their units, and Audie didn't want to leave Company B. However, the battalion commander provided exemption from the rotation policy and assured Audie that he would be provided assistance with paperwork. Thus, Sergeant Murphy became Lieutenant Murphy on the 14th of October, 1944. 12 days later, on the 26th of October, he received the worst wound of the war. While his unit was attacking in the mountain forest near Les Rouges, he was caught off guard by a German sniper and shot in the right hip. Audie managed to kill the attacker, but endured hours of intense pain before reaching a field hospital. His wound became gangrenous, and he underwent a gloomy 2.5-month treatment and recovery process. Penicillin saved his life. While bedridden, he had plenty of time to succumb to the fatalism common to all infantrymen. These Germans are becoming better shots than before, or my luck is running out, he noted. I think they'll tag me forever someday. After recovering, Murphy could have gone home with his wounds and medals, but his fighting spirit had never diminished. The enemy was still fighting tenaciously, and as British, American, Canadian, and Free French armies advanced toward the German border meter by meter with heavy losses, experienced fighters like Audie Murphy were desperately needed at the front. Therefore, after a well-deserved leave in Paris, Murphy rejoined Company B on the 14th of January 1945. His most magnificent battlefield achievement, the one that would earn him the much-coveted Medal of Honor, had yet to come. The 3rd Infantry Division was preparing for an attack toward the Alsatian city of Colmar in northeast France, south of Strasbourg, on the eastern slopes of the rugged Vosges Mountains. A German bridgehead west of the Rhine River had penetrated 80 miles wide and deep into Allied lines. With the help of harsh winter, 8 enemy divisions were preventing the French First Army, part of Lieutenant General Jacob L. Devers' 6th Army Group, from reaching Colmar. A 2-pronged French-American attack was planned to begin on the 22nd of January 1945. The US VI Corps would advance from the north and the French I Corps from the south. The 3rd Division was spearheading VI Corps. On the 23rd of January, the 30th Regiment attached to the 3rd Infantry Division had been ordered to clear the Bois de Rive, a wooded area at the foot of the villages of Holtzwihr and River. But a German counterattack consisting of at least 10 tanks and 100 infantry had destroyed the 30th Division. Unable to dig trenches in the frozen ground, the soldiers had retreated. Lieutenant Murphy's battalion had left the reserve forces to follow the 3rd Division's advance units toward Riedwerk through rivers and forests, and was ordered to capture the Bois de Riedwerk the next day. When the 15th Regiment retreated, enemy fire was intense and casualties were rapidly mounting. When the Texan woke up early on the morning of the 25th of January, he found that his hair had frozen to the edge of his foxhole. That same afternoon, he was wounded again when German mortar fragments wounded his left leg. He hastily bandaged it and refused to go to the aid station. Nevertheless, by midnight on the 25th of January, Murphy's men had reached a position 550 meters deep in the forest immediately north of Holtzwihr. They tried to dig, but the ground was frozen. Murphy later wrote, "This night was unusually long, and the snow was much colder than I could imagine. The sounds of pigs on frozen ground were beating madly on my eardrums." When Company B's commander was wounded in the early hours of the 26th of January, Murphy took command, with all officers in Company B either dead or wounded except Murphy. The company's strength had been reduced from 120 to only 18 effective riflemen. The lieutenant was worried that his position could be overrun by a German counterattack. At dawn on the 26th, 2 M10 tank destroyers from Lieutenant Colonel Walter E. Tardy's 601st Tank Destroyer Battalion came to reinforce Company B's dangerous position. Murphy, making use of the time available, positioned one of the tank destroyers from the 3rd Reconnaissance Battalion and 5 small armored vehicles on his right flank. The 2nd tank destroyer was positioned 35 meters in front of the thin American line. and Company B made contact with Company A attached to the 15th Regiment on its left. Murphy's command post in a drainage ditch immediately in front of his first tank destroyer maintained radio contact with the battalion headquarters located a mile behind. In the early afternoon, the expected reinforcements from the 2nd Battalion, 30th Regiment, had still not arrived, but Murphy's order was to hold positions until reinforcements arrived. On the 26th of January, as the 15th Regiment prepared to advance near Holtzwihr, the enemy counterattacked with armored infantry. Around 2 p.m. that day, Murphy and his men saw 6 large Mark VI Tiger tanks and more than 200 German infantry coming toward them. These Germans were later identified as soldiers of the 2nd Mountain Division, recently transferred from Norway to the Colmar region and trained in winter warfare. Audie shouted to his men to take action. One of the tank destroyers in front of him tried to take a firing position on the icy ground but slid into a ditch. As the Germans advanced toward Murphy's position, trying to cut the road to Holtzwihr and threaten all 3rd Division positions, the tank destroyer quickly ran to the rear. Murphy, spreading a map in front of his foxhole, called for artillery support on a field telephone. 90mm shells fired from the tank destroyers could not stop the relentless advance of German tanks. Murphy recalls, "I saw the enemy tanks take direct hits, but the shells were ineffective against the heavily armored German tanks. Advancing and firing mercilessly, they neutralized a machine gun crew from Company B. Then the rear tank destroyer was hit by an 88mm shell that penetrated its thin armor and killed the commander and gunner. The surviving crew members quickly got out and withdrew to the forest. American artillery shells fell to the ground, killing German soldiers in the open. Murphy ordered coordinate corrections to be made to the artillery battalion, and shells continued to throw corpses in all directions, hurling showers of snowy earth among enemy forces. However, German tanks continued to advance slowly without any damage. The situation looked hopeless for the Americans. How were 18 riflemen expected to stop a German armored task force? Murphy told his squad sergeant, "Pull the men back, I'll stay here with the phone as long as possible." The sergeant didn't want to leave him alone. "Get the hell out of here," Audie shouted. "That's an order!" The sergeant reluctantly led his men 200 meters back into the depths of the forest, and the determined Texan faced the approaching enemy alone. With German forces now only 200 meters away, Audie shouted into the field telephone, "Let's throw some artillery!" Then he fired his M1 carbine until he ran out of ammunition. The Germans attacked. Murphy was desperate, but then noticed there was a loaded and idle 50 caliber machine gun on the hull of the still-burning tank destroyer. This was his only chance. Dragging the phone line behind him, Audie ran to the tank destroyer and climbed on top. After pulling the dead commander out of his way, he began firing at enemy forces. While his shells could not be effective against Tiger tanks, he hoped that the loss of infantry support could repel them. While firing the machine gun, Murphy continued to call for artillery fire to neutralize the tanks. After correcting coordinates, the voice on the other end of the line asked, "How close are they to you?" The Texan replied dryly, "Hold the phone, let one of them talk to you." He swept the .50 caliber weapon from side to side and fired repeatedly. Germans were writhing in the snow. Enemy shells shook the tank destroyer that could explode at any moment, and Audie nearly fell twice. But he pulled himself together and continued firing. Smoke rising from the burning tank destroyer provided him cover. He called for more artillery fire, and shells shattered the ground 50 meters in front of him. Most of the Germans were now lying dead or wounded. Murphy wrote, "I loved that artillery fire. I could see the Royal soldiers disappearing among the clouds of smoke and snow, hear their screams and shouts, but they kept coming as if nothing could stop them." A group of German infantry got within 10 meters of Murphy's position on the deck of the flaming tank destroyer. Murphy spotted them just in time and brought them down in the snow. Miraculously, the Tigers began to retreat. Audie called for one last coordinate correction. "Right fire," he shouted, 50 over. The voice on the line warned, "Right on your position." Jumping from the tank destroyer, Audie replied, "Let it go, I'm leaving." His leg wound from the previous day began bleeding as he hurriedly limped back toward the forest. The tank destroyer finally turned into a ball of flame, and the concussion knocked Murphy to the ground in the snow. he climbed and continued on his way, shortly returning to his company. Single-handedly, he had repelled an armored unit and saved his men from annihilation. The small unit regrouped in the forest and then cleared the area of Germans. The next day, Company B advanced toward Holtzwihr, and the town was captured at 10 a.m. Murphy participated in operations over the following weeks to clear the Colmar front of the enemy. The city fell to the Allies on the 8th of February. Promoted to first lieutenant 8 days later, Audie was assigned to battalion headquarters for several weeks and was not with his company as it advanced through Germany toward Austria. He would return to command Company B in late May 1945. For his heroism in the Holtzwihr forests, Murphy was awarded the Medal of Honor. He wrote home, "Since this is the only medal they can give, I'll have to behave myself for a while." After leaving Paris, he served as a liaison officer for several weeks as the European War ended. His superiors didn't want to risk sending him to the front again. Although Audie was disappointed, he found excuses to scout forward areas. The climax of Lieutenant Audie Leon Murphy's military career came on the 2nd of June 1945, when Lieutenant General Alexander M. Patch, commander of the U.S. 7th Army, placed the pale blue Medal of Honor ribbon around his neck at a ceremony near Salzburg, Austria. His citation read, "His direction of artillery fire destroyed most of the enemy. He killed or wounded approximately 50. The Texan had earned, in addition to his country's highest honor, the Distinguished Service Cross, Silver Star with Oak Leaf Cluster, Legion of Merit, the Precious Combat Infantryman Badge, Bronze Star with Cluster, Purple Heart with Cluster, Presidential Unit Citation, French Fourragère, French Legion of Honor, Croix de Guerre with Palm and Silver Star, French Liberation Medal, Belgian Croix de Guerre with Palm, and campaign ribbons. 28 medals and citations in total. He has spent 400 days on the front lines in Sicily, Italy, France, and Germany, and was officially credited with killing, wounding, or capturing 240 enemy soldiers. And he has saved the lives of many of his own men. Yet he was still too young to vote. America's most decorated soldier returned home to nationwide acclaim from Paris on the 10th of June 1945. Everywhere he went, people sought him out to shake his hand, and some even cried when they met him. When he entered a barber shop to get a haircut, fascinated spectators gathered outside and looked in through the window. In his hometown, Audie was greeted with parades and banquets, and his photograph was hung in the state capitol in Austin. The Warren sharecropper's son was now a national figure, shy, reticent, and uncomfortable with all this attention, and tired. Lacking proper education and skills for civilian life, Audie wondered what he would do for the rest of his life. He was in constant pain from his hip wound and his application to the U.S. Military Academy was rejected. Thus, his chance for a military career was taken away, and he was discharged on the 21st of September 1945. The photograph of the smiling, baby-faced war hero on the cover of Life magazine, dated the 16th of July 1945, opened the door of opportunity for Audie Murphy, but he himself was not adequately equipped for it. This path led to Hollywood through legendary movie star James Cagney. When the two men met, Cagney, who was Murphy's height, exclaimed, "Honor from within, not honor imposed from without, a spiritual calling." He looks like a grown-up Huckleberry Finn. No, not quite grown up. There's something in those eyes as old as death but as young as spring. The famous actor acted like a father, trying to make the young man an actor by putting him on salary and personal contract. The Texan actor stayed in the star's pool house for a year, while the foundations of his new career were being laid. His relationship with Cagney led to a screen test, a series of small film roles, and a 3-year marriage to beautiful star Wanda Hendricks from Jacksonville, Florida. In July 1950, a month after the Korean War began, Murphy returned to Dallas to join the 36th Infantry Division of the Texas National Guard. However, he did not go to Korea. His final rank was later Major in the Texas Guard. Audie Murphy appeared in a total of 44 feature films in the 1,950 seconds and 1,960 seconds, mostly low-budget westerns. His first and most effective leading role was in John Huston's critically acclaimed 1,951 Civil War film, adapted from Stephen Crane's classic story The Red Badge of Courage. portraying a frightened Union Army soldier. The cast also included Audie's war comrade Bill Mauldin. With the help of ghostwriter Spec McClure, Audie published his memoirs in 1,949 inches, a book called To Hell and Back. This book provided a simple, candid, and sometimes heartbreaking record of World War II from a foxhole perspective. Audie explained, "The real reason I wanted the book written was to remind a forgetful society of the many boys who could never come home." The present tense was chosen for the book because there's not much left in the warrior's life besides the present tense. My purpose was to tell the story as simply and honestly as possible, avoiding heroics, because I don't believe in heroics. For me, the great man of war was the little man who did what was asked of him and paid whatever price this action cost. When the book's film version was later made in Hollywood, with Audie Murphy uncomfortably portraying himself, he was appalled by Universal Studios' poster advertisement, "Too young to shave, but old enough to win all the medals his country could give." Audie openly criticized the film, which he saw as a flashy betrayal of the dog-faced infantrymen he had served with. He fought to strengthen the censored script that depicted the misery, pain, and sadness of war. But he failed. To Hell and Back, released in 1955, directed by Jesse Hibbs and co-starring Marshall Thompson, Charles Drake, and Jack Kelly, was a sprawling action film overshadowed by a static and cliched script. It became Universal's highest-grossing film for 20 years. Shortly after divorcing Wanda Hendricks, Murphy married vibrant airline hostess and fellow Texan Pamela Archer in April 1951. The war heroes' admired couple had two sons named Terry Michael and James Shannon. Meanwhile, he wrote the lyrics and words for 16 country and western songs. His most popular song, Shutters and Boards, written with composer Scott Turner in 1962, was recorded by many artists including Dean Martin and Porter Wagoner. Another song, When the Wind Blows in Chicago, was recorded by Eddie Arnold. Audie also raised thoroughbred horses, became a Shriner, and worked with troubled children. However, success in Hollywood had gone badly for Audie Murphy. In the late 1950 seconds and 1960 seconds, public interest in Western films declined and his box office success diminished. He gambled too much and unluckily got involved in a series of unsuccessful business ventures and went bankrupt in 1968. 2 years later, he was acquitted of murder charges after beating a man in a bar fight. Increasingly troubled by his battlefield experiences, Audie frequently had nightmares, struggled with insomnia and depression, and slept with a pistol under his pillow. He became addicted to prescription drugs, and negative news about his troubles drove him into seclusion. He donated his medals, and when the army replaced them, he donated them again. Eventually, Audie tried to pull himself together and became a representative of an investment group. He planned the business trip that he hoped would get him back on his feet. On the 28th of May, 1971, he flew with 4 others in a light aircraft from Atlanta, Georgia to Martinsville, Virginia, to visit a prefabricated housing factory. Late that morning, a plane crashed in rain and fog near the small town of Galax in southwest Virginia. There were no survivors. Although Murphy's 1,965 were requested that his funeral be simple and non-military, America's World War II hero was buried with full ceremony at Arlington National Cemetery on the 7th of June 1971. His grave, near the amphitheater, is the second most visited grave year-round. Only President John F. Kennedy's grave attracts more visitors. Meanwhile, schools, hospitals, highways, and army clubs were named in honor of Audie Murphy. Statues were erected in San Antonio and Greenville, Texas. He was posthumously inducted into the National Cowboy and Western Heritage Museum in Oklahoma City. Then Texas Governor George W. Bush declared the 20th of June Audie Murphy Day in 1999, and the war hero's portrait appeared on a 33-cent postage stamp in 2000. Audie Murphy is a tragic figure in the pantheon of American heroes. Having grown up with hardships and not very successful in civilian life, Murphy is remembered for his courage in the fight against fascist oppression. However, the dark demons of the battlefield continued to follow him, and he could not find peace until he died. Audie Murphy's life shows us what true heroism really means. A young boy from Texas became a legendary war hero through incredible courage and determination. If you were inspired by his story, make sure to hit the like button. Subscribe to our channel to stay updated on more World War II and hero stories. Share your thoughts in the comments. What do you think was Audie Murphy's most remarkable moment? Don't forget to share this video with your friends to show your support. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.